we're here in Detroit right now. We've got the Rensen behind us. It's Independence Day. Nice American flag. Also behind us, I think this was done around Juneteenth this year, just a few days ago. We all require and want respect. Man or woman, black or white, it's our basic human right. And it's tagged by AF, I think Antifa, who knows. I was talking to Rick about the tomb to the unknown God and how in the Bible, Paul used that and said, I'll tell you about the real God. What do you take that to mean?
Any form of art or any type of quote, I think you can only really ask the artist or the creator what it really meant. And I think it's subject to open to interpretation. I mean, on its face, it sounds really good, but I don't know what is meant by it. The one thing that jumps out at me is when it says respect. Well, on its face, I think we all can agree that respect is important. But in terms of demonstrating respect, what exactly would it take for this author to be satisfied that proper respect was rendered to the appropriate person? How does that manifest itself? In what form of respect is he talking about? I mean, is he talking about respect such as you and I are here enjoying ourselves along the waterfront, here along the strait of the Detroit River? You know, we were just talking about whether it's a strait or a river. It's a strait, by the way. And what do you see and what do you take from it? And you know what? On its face, I like what it says. I like what it sounds, but I'm not sure exactly what message the author is trying to get. But yeah, I think everyone should be afforded basic dignity and respect. But I'm not sure what some of those consequences are. If I had a chance to talk with the author, we would have a great conversation and we would explore exactly what he was getting to. But you know what? He had limited space here.
Yes.
I'll cut him some slack.
Well, speaking of talking to an author and the result being a great conversation, before we met up, I was surfing your Instagram page. Since I have the author here.
Man, there's some really interesting stuff. I try to keep it focused, though. You go to some Instagram pages and they're all over the place. But generally speaking, I'm trying to keep it focused on personal protection, self-defense, and personal responsibility and knowing your rights.
I'm here on your page. You posted a day ago, a Michigan concealed pistol license, CPL, is not a 007 license. Let's just go through some of your recent posts.
Right.
Like, what did you mean by that?
If you're familiar with Ian Fleming's mythical character, James Bond, he had the character and he had a number in 007. He had a license to kill as part of his professional tool set. If he needed to kill someone, he wouldn't have to worry about being prosecuted for it. And I say that a concealed pistol license is not a 007 license is because we can't just use our guns in a haphazard fashion when we're carrying it on our CPL. There are rules of engagement that must be followed. And specifically, there's been a couple of incidents that have been recorded in the media. I like to make it really plain and clear to people that only a very narrow band of simultaneously occurring circumstances justify drawing your firearm and actually deploying it and using it. That's when you are facing imminent jeopardy of great bodily harm, sexual assault, or death. You may then use lethal force without a duty to retreat. Now, anything outside of that, you're outside of the law, and of course, each of those words has some greater meaning when you delve into them. You can't just pull your gun out and do whatever feels right in the moment. You need to know the law and follow it each and every single time that you're carrying your gun.
I'm quite confident you've already gone into far more detail than we have time with all the things we can cover here. That couple, I think in St. Louis, the guy had, I think, AR-15 and the woman had some sort of pistol.
Oh yeah, and they were outside of their property and there was a throng of people that were walking by. If I'm recalling the same story, he had a long rifle, like an AR type gun, and she had like this real small, teeny tiny little, I don't know, maybe a 22 or something, and they were steadfastly out front of their property guarding it. But I had a problem with how they were doing it because it would have been okay for them to display their guns. Maybe he could have had his AR on a sling, maybe going across his chest, and she could have maybe had her gun in a holster. No, they actually had their hands on the gun. You could see where the gun was being pointed at people in the audience. I'm not saying that they were making an effort to try to kill or shoot them. You can't just point a gun at people just because you feel that it's appropriate. Now, I get it being a homeowner and there's a huge bunch of people coming across and past your property, and maybe you've heard something in the media that some of these people in some circumstances have damaged property and you're concerned about your property, but nothing like that apparently had happened at that time. I think that his actions, I'm not going to say probably, they crossed the line. It would have been okay to carry it and sling it and display it, but to just point it at people, I think that was wrong.
There's a term brandishing. Is that a step beyond brandishing, or is that merely brandishing?
Well, brandishing, I guess it depends. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder unless it's actually defined in the statute. For many years, people here in the state of Michigan were being charged with and prosecuted with brandishing for the simple act of openly displaying a gun on a sling. You know, someone called the police and the police got involved. They say, oh, well, let's charge them with brandishing. A lot of people were having some unfortunate outcomes in the legal system. One of the things that some of the gun rights groups here in the state of Michigan undertook in the last couple of years, and it's funny, they actually created gun control to protect their members. They said, well, look, let us define brandishing, a gun law, so that when it's out there and law enforcement compares it to what people are actually doing, it will actually give us the added benefit of us not being recklessly prosecuted for something that should be inherently legal.
I'm going to save some questions toward that end, but before we get off the topic of this couple, not that this background changes anything in the sense that they shouldn't have been pointing the weapons at people. They should have had it face toward the ground.
Pointed face down, off to the side, on the sling. That would have been appropriate, and it would not have delayed them in any practical sense from actually deploying it if it was needed to protect their lives, if they were in imminent jeopardy of great bodily harm or some other state that would necessitate using lethal force or deadly force. I have no problem with them having the guns, especially on their property. I just had a problem with them pointing them at people, and if they're not justified.
I heard that they had bought that house that they're in 30 years prior and had spent the past few decades renovating it. They had just gotten into a magazine. I believe it's like a historic, like 1800s home. The protesters actually went through the gate, I understand. They're on their way to protest the mayor of the city for...
So they actually trespassed upon their private property.
It was a gated private community. They broke through the gated private community and they're on their way to the mayor's house because someone doxed her address. And they see this fancy home and they're like, must be someone we don't like. And they broke through the gate, and that's when the couple came out, because they're like, 30 years is not going to go up in 15 minutes if the worst happened. But they shouldn't have been pointing their guns.
Here's the great thing about our country. Each state has their own laws that define rules of engagement for using firearms. I can tell you what the laws are here in Michigan, but I can't tell you what the laws are in that state. And I'm guessing that the laws in that state don't justify that you shoot people even if they come onto your property without permission. And yes, law enforcement should be engaged, law enforcement should come, but until members of that crowd started engaging in activity that rises to the level of using lethal force to defend yourself, you're just going to have to hold off and wait. It's kind of like other stories that have risen to the top of the public consciousness within the last couple of days. The story here in Detroit where a woman, a bicyclist along with her companion, a male bicyclist, they got into an incident, a shouting match with a guy who was driving a vehicle. And I tell people, look, just keep it moving. Don't escalate. The driver of the vehicle gets out with a knife and he's presenting this imminent threat. And this woman, she takes it upon herself to use her gun to defend herself and her man by shooting the guy one time. And the guy unfortunately died, but I see that incident and I say it was totally justified. And some people were like, well, gee, she had a gun. And I'm like, yeah, well, he had a knife. A gun is just as lethal as a knife. A knife is just as lethal as a gun. As a matter of fact, if you're not paying attention, a person with a knife can kill someone with a gun.
You said that on Instagram. Personal protection tip. If you pull a knife on someone, don't be surprised if you get shot.
Yes.
However, carrying a gun won't guarantee that you won't get stabbed to death. Something I see you say a lot is true story.
True story. That's my catchphrase, man. It means that I mean exactly what I say. I meant it, I said it. It's the unabashed truth. I stand on it. And you know what? You can quote me.
You got t-shirts?
I need
merch?
to. I need to have some true story shirts, man.
Shorts too, yeah, for the ladies.
Speaking of which, this gratuitous plug, I'm going to be coming out with some pink laid shirts for the ladies. I'm doing my ladies event that's coming up. You'll be seeing me all over social media talking about it. And you know what? Maybe we'll come up with a true story shirt, man.
I love it.